Let's get started. So hello and welcome to our next session in our training seminar dedicated to how to use different tools and methods for machine learning. Today, we are actually very happy to have a presentation delivered by the Intel team that works on OpenVINO. We have been using OpenVINO for some time for some of our projects, and we found this tool to be very powerful in particularly when you develop an inference engine that needs to run on some sort of edge device, for example. And so, so we are very happy to introduce Intel presenters today, Yamini Nimagaga, Kumar Vishov, and Mustafa Kaus. So welcome. I hope you can introduce yourself and say, what you do at Intel, and also please get started.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Vishwesh, and I have Yamini and Mustafa with me. I take care of OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow from product management side. And yeah, Mustafa and Yamini, if you could introduce yourselves.
Sure. Hi everyone, this is Yamini. I'm a principal engineer in Intel IoTG group. I work on integrating OpenVINO into OpenAI frameworks like TensorFlow, PyTorch, Onyx Runtime, and I also work on DevCloud AI workflows. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, this is Mustafa. I'm an AI framework engineer at Intel, and currently I'm working on OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow as a software engineer. Thank you.
Yeah, we also have Devang who will moderate chats and answer your queries. Yeah, so this is the first slide, and this talks about the journey. Here, I'll take you through OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. I'll introduce you to this wonderful tool. And then Mustafa will take over and show you some interesting samples, interesting demo on Google Colab. After that, Yamini will talk about Intel DevCloud and take you through demo applications. Yeah, so let's get started. And this is the path we are going to follow. We'll talk about AI, deep learning, and then we'll introduce you to OpenVINO. Then our tool will come into picture, that is OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. Then we'll talk about workflow, architecture, and what is there for the users of OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. And ready to start guide. And at last, we have a demo which you guys can follow along. Yeah, so let's move forward. AI. AI is changing industries. It is changing every market. It is enabling new and enhanced use cases in various industries, from industrial applications to health, life sciences, to retail, to safety and securities. If I talk about emergency response, then there is very less time to infer something. If we are using any predictive analytics approach, then that has to be super quick. Similarly, in energy, we have a lot of optimization use cases where we want to maximize something and minimize something, right? Then we have a lot of education related use cases. Nowadays in pandemic, the learning experience has changed a lot, and AI has played a very important role in transforming the learning experience. In finance, we do some sort of credit risk modeling, and other stuffs are also coming into play. Then in healthcare, there are a lot of use cases where I was reading one research paper in that in healthcare, we have utilized X-ray scans, and based and on that data, a lot of solutions have come into the market, which actually predicts the probability of having a disease. Then similarly in industrial, similarly in media, retail, smart homes, smart cities. So there are many. The AI is changing industries for sure, and it is everywhere. Let's move forward. Uh, the need, you can see some big numbers over here, right? 52 billion driven by AI inference. The need of artificial intelligence on edge devices has been realized, and the race to design edge optimized chipset have begun. You can see like big 52 billion and driven by AI inference. And this graph you can see, right? According to research from Ombia, the global edge AI chipset revenue will reach 52 billion by 2025. And it is all because of need for AI inference at the edge devices. Well, AI processing on the edge find a way around privacy concerns while avoiding bandwidth, latency, cost concerns of cloud computing. We all know that computing comes with a cost, and finding a way around through edge devices is the solution. Let's move forward. Now, there comes a very interesting question. How do you determine the right computing for your AI needs? Whenever you start working on an application or you have spent considerable amount of time on your application, after that, you want to plan your steps ahead. For that, you need to determine workloads, requirements, and demand. Well, we start with taking a cross section of your environment to determine the breakdown of AI and other workloads in your application. Basically, it tries to find an answer to what is my workload profile. Then we figure out requirement. You can see the word cloud over on the slide. Here we have scalability, throughput, security, data, cost, efficiency. Mainly we try to find out answer to what are my use case requirement, how my use case looks like. Then at the last, we determine how much demand there is for AI in an environment. We ask some more questions like what percentage of your overall compute is running AI? Is AI persistently in use? What kind of scale is required for AI's workload? Once you have answers to these questions, the challenge of identifying the right AI compute to meet your needs and keep total cost of ownership low, it becomes a lot more manageable. Like once you have answers to these questions, then for your project's use case, you should determine the right computing for your AI needs. So that is the crux over here. Yeah, so let's move forward. Well, in deep learning, we are aware of the amount of breakthroughs, new opportunities deep learning has brought. There's still very little deep learning deployments today. What is the reason behind it? I'll just talk about three major points. First, unique inference needs. Whenever anyone starts working on a project, they have a very specific requirement need. And also if you kind of think about the gap in the performance and accuracy between trained and deployed models. Whenever we train model, we train in like large server farms, data center. But when we go to deploy that solution, that is mainly on edge devices or low-end devices. There is a gap in the configuration of devices or in the environment where we train the model and where we deploy the model. So, well, there are unique sets of technical challenges that come into play when it comes to deployment. Then second point is integration challenges. Typically, the training of the deep learning networks is performed in data centers or server farms. As I told you, right, there is a difference. But also when we deploy a solution, like suppose if I take example of real-time traffic monitoring, that computer vision model had been trained on large server farms, but that eventually that is being deployed on a camera, on a street camera, that is an edge device. So that is so there is a disconnect in end-to-end development workflow. From a software perspective, there are various programming language, third-party dependencies, memory consumptions, and supported operating systems. But and also if we look at the hardware stuff, right, then there are different data types, limited power envelope, and form factor constraints. The end devices have like in the example of real-time traffic monitoring, right? That is small device. It has its own constraints. Then because of these things, it certainly points us to a fact that there is a need for a dedicated API or a communication link between the software and the hardware, and to streamline the whole workflow from development to deployment. And there comes our tool. We'll talk about our tool in upcoming slides. And there is one more point. No one size fits all. It is applicable everywhere, and so there are diverse requirements for extremely great number of use cases that require unique approaches. And in most of the research projects, use cases, they evolve after certain like suppose if I start working on an application after spending 3 months or 4 months, I achieve something. After that, I have to build upon that. I have to improve my solution. So there are many phases which comes, and there's a lot of diversity in the use cases, and no one solution can fit all, or no and one approach cannot satisfy all the use cases. That is why there is a need of an API, and let's go get there. Yeah. So well, Intel distribution of OpenVINO toolkit. So let's go through the overview of this product. OpenVINO, it's short for Open Vision Inference and Neural Network Optimization. It is very hard to remember, but the thing is, this toolkit can accelerate AI workloads, including computer vision, audio, speech, language, recommendation systems. So well, you can see that there are three major steps: build, optimize, deploy. Developers will use the tools inside the toolkit, this OpenVINO toolkit, to optimize models that are trained with TensorFlow or other supported deep learning frameworks like PyTorch, Caffe, and then they run high performance inference with an approach called write once, deploy anywhere. That means once they are done with all the configurations and the changes, they don't have to worry about migrating to other Intel offerings of hardware. Like they can deploy the solution on various Intel architectures, including CPU, integrated GPU, Intel Movidius VPU, GNA. Similarly, they can deploy on various operating systems like Windows, Linux, Mac OS. So this is let's get into the detail now. Yeah. So well, this slide actually, it talks about the compounding effect of both hardware and software improvements. Okay. So well, Intel is continuously shipping new hardware with built-in agility to adopt AI and deep learning with scale and flexibility. You can see here like the baseline, the version. You can observe the trend in the slide. It is getting better with the new releases. For example, from the first to second generation Xeon processors, the Intel DL Boost, Deep Learning Boost, which has vector neural network instructions paired with improvement with OpenVINO toolkit new releases. And by looking at the trend, you can expect even better performance in upcoming releases. Yeah, let's move forward. Now let's talk. Let's see this. There is a function. We have a multi-setting in OpenVINO that automatically leverages both the iGPU and the CPU. with no other software changes. And you can see the graphs over here, right? The blue, then we have the first one, the blue bar, and the last one, the yellow bar, right? The yellow bar is higher. It uses GPU and CPU together. And that is because of the multi-setting in OpenVINO. And it doesn't require any software changes. That is the beauty of this functionality. And you can see that we have benchmarked it with some popular models like DeepLab, V3, and there is a picture depicting it's a segmentation model, and it can detect pixel level defects in PCB manufacturing process. Then we have MobileNet SST. It's an object detection model that can be applied to detect location of an anomaly in an engine housing. Then we have ResNet 50, the third image, which is a classification model used to classify which defect bin a glass bottle failed an inspection test for. Similarly, we have SST 300, a lightweight detection model to quickly and accurately detect the location of assembly tray on a manufacturing conveyor belt. At last, we benchmarked it with SqueezeNet 1.1. It's again a lightweight detection model to detect to detect whether or not an LCD screen passes or fails a defective. So these are the use cases where we have tested and observed the compounding effect of hardware and software. Yeah, so let's move forward. OpenVINO distribution of OpenVINO toolkit. So it has three major advantages. Okay, high performance deep learning inference, streamlined development, ease of use, and the third, write once, deploy anywhere. So it's a tool for high performance deep learning targeted at faster, more accurate real world results. And it can be deployed across Intel architecture from edge to cloud. Well, let's talk about the write once deploy anywhere approach, where developer can write an application on or algorithm once, and they can deploy it across Intel architecture. So these are the three major points of OpenVINO toolkit. So let's dive deep. So as we have seen in the earlier slides, we have three major steps. First, we build the model, optimize it, and then we deploy it. This is the typical workflow of using OpenVINO toolkit. First, developers, and you can easily relate it with your ongoing projects. Any machine learning project, right, where developer will need to either create or train their deep learning models with popular frameworks like TensorFlow or PyTorch, or they can nowadays we have a lot of pre-trained models available. There's Open Model Zoo. From there, we can download pre-trained model, and then we can tweak it further for our use case and plug it into our application. Then after building the model, then developers will use Python application from the OpenVINO toolkit. The name of the application is Model Optimizer. What it does, it converts the pre-trained model to intermediate representation format. And what happens during the conversion? During the conversion, the Model Optimizer conducts topology level hardware agnostic optimization to the original model, and it can also compress the original model into FP floating point 16 data precision. So this is how the Model Optimizer actually converts the model into higher representation or intermediate representation. The intermediate representation includes two files, the XML file and bin file. XML file holds the topology of the converted model, and the bin file contains the weight and bias of the converted model. And when it is converted into intermediate representation, we can proceed to the next step. And it's just like and one more point I want to tell, like there's an option to convert the intermediate representation into intent data precision by a tool called POT. It's post-training optimization tool. It reduces the model size, it makes the model lighter, and then it eventually helps in quicker inferencing. Yeah, and then the lastly, that in developers application source code, the IR files, the intermediate representation files, will be read into memory, then loaded onto one or more selected Intel hardware through the inference engine API. The third API is the inference engine API, which takes IR as input, right? Well, by following this typical workflow, developers will receive the optimal performance gain, and that is a very good thing for developers compared to the original deep learning framework format the model is trained on, right? If they were using TensorFlow, if they if that model goes through this tool, then they will get a better model uh, better model in the sense like they will get that model will be able to inference quicker, and that model will be quicker in inferencing. Yeah. Well, that is there, and you must have observed in this slide, I have used a lot of jargons, lot of tool specific terms, right? So, well, that points us to a fact that it has a learning curve. We cannot use it instantly, correct? We all have seen superheroes movies, right? They wear a costume and they get a superpower. This tool is even easier than that. You just need to write 2 lines of code. There's no need to discover those superpowers. Well, let's talk about the learning curve first. Then I'll present the solution, the OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. So, well, the first step, developers who have implemented TensorFlow API in their application will be learning how to use model optimizer. That is required. You need to know about model optimizer to work with OpenVINO toolkit. Then only you can optimize your model. You can convert it into IR format, and there are a lot of steps, lower level steps involved there. So, well, I'll just talk about Model Optimizer. Model Optimizer is a standalone Python application. Developers need to know about the original model well. They should know about the original model well in order to be able to choose the right parameters, either commonly across different frameworks or TensorFlow, specific while running the model optimizer. Because if they don't know about the model well, they won't be able to select the right parameters for the model optimizer. They need to know about the model optimizer plus the model they are using, the mathematics behind it, the operators involved in that model. Those things should be known to the users. So that itself says that this would definitely take some time in observing and practicing, right? And then the next challenge for those developers will be shifting to inference engine API. In the last slide, I talked about model optimizer and inference engine, right? When the model optimizer actually takes the model, converts it into IR, and then IR is consumed by inference engine API. So after model conversion, developers will need to be able to read and load the IR format model in their applications. That they have to make corresponding changes for all the other user-defined functions. They have to do some sort of development activities. And the source code updating will definitely take extra time in tweaking and tuning before they could see the expected result. They know we can very well assure the users that they will get a very good result But to see that result, they have to go through certain steps. They have to cover, they have to learn about the tool, about the lower level details of the tool, and they need to understand their model better. Apart from understanding the business problem they're trying to solve, they need to uh, make the model white box, and then they can use it in the full efficient way. One more point I want to highlight, that is about the model coverage. Not all the models can be converted into IR format or intermediate representation format, which is required by OpenVINO toolkit. Uh, Although the OpenVINO toolkit continuously adds supports to more and more TensorFlow operations, there are still some that remain unsupported. Under this situation, developer will see an error message called, it will be like operation unsupported message. And developers have to write extensions or support or some additional code to support those unsupported operators or operations. Yeah. So then that also requires a good knowledge of the tool, how to write extension to the existing library, right, to support the unsupported operations. And that there, the understanding of the math is very important, the math behind the model. If they are very much aware of the mathematics and the operators behind the model, then only they can write support for that. They can write extension to that, right? So then we can see that there is a learning curve and there is a requirement of time to overcome these points. We have introduced our tool called OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. So let's reach it. This is an awesome tool, an awesome integration with TensorFlow, where you can quickly test the power of OpenVINO without spending much time, without getting into learning curve, without it's just a matter of two lines of code, right? To make developers using TensorFlow API in their application have a better experience adapting to OpenVINO toolkit, we are introducing you to the OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. As I said, with this tool, only 2 lines of code are needed to be added to the existing TensorFlow application. Then the inference workload will be able to be deployed on Intel CPU, integrated GPU, VPU, without rewriting the source code, without without changing, without spending much time, without messing up with the already running code. You just need to append 2 lines and everything. Then the model will be quicker, and you'll get a good performance boost. Well, the best part is they don't have to go through the learning curve of model optimizer or inference engine, right? One more point I would like to say about this tool is just like a fancy door. Okay, you can quickly try it, and then using this door, you can enter into the world of OpenVINO. So well, we should it's very much compatible with TensorFlow application, and all the currently OpenVINO unsupported TensorFlow operation uh, will fall back to the TensorFlow runtime for execution. This feature is called dynamic fallback, and because of this feature, we have increased our model coverage. We are now supporting more models, because not all operators of TensorFlow models need to be supported by OpenVINO. If some operators are not supported, they will fall back to native OpenVINO runtime, and that all happens inline. With all those benefits listed for maximum performance or additional fine-grained model tuning and hardware control, we recommend developers migrating to OpenVINO Inference Engine API. They just if they want more performance boost, then they can open the door and enter the world of OpenVINO toolkit through this integration with TensorFlow. Yeah, so this is our product, and you can see the line number 8 and 9 on the screenshot. These two lines you require, that's all. And apart from that, all other lines of code are familiar, that they will remain as it is. And your model will become, your solution will become quicker, faster. So that's the beauty of this solution. So let's move forward. So well, OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow is great for those users who are exploring OpenVINO, or it is also for the users for whom native OpenVINO doesn't work. It emphasizes TensorFlow API, and the keyword here is model compatibility. It's very much compatible with TensorFlow. Our effort was to bring TensorFlow and OpenVINO so close that they appear one. And for users, it will eradicate all the frictions. And having said that, we also believe the best performance and experience for developers over time is delivered by them migrating to native OpenVINO. Those users who are already working on OpenVINO, or they have time to learn OpenVINO, that is definitely the best approach to gain best performance results, right? For developers looking for better off-the-shelf performance than native TensorFlow on their TensorFlow models, OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow is highly recommended. And for developers looking to get the best performance and efficiency, the full Intel distribution of OpenVINO toolkit is the recommended part. That is the distinction between native OpenVINO and OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. And it all depends on the time developer has, or willingness to learn, but they can quickly see the effect of the tool using this integration. Yeah. So let's talk about the positioning of the product. So well, as I described, OpenVINO integration focus is on TensorFlow developers using TensorFlow APIs to try out OpenVINO toolkit. It provides acceleration for all TF models available in TF Hub. We have coverage of 270 plus models, and it is very easy to onboard TF developers. There is no need to learn a new API. It's just pip install plus 2 lines of code. And there is one point that users might lose some performance number, okay? Because to get the best performance number, they have to go through the OpenVINO, native OpenVINO. But if they are ready to sacrifice to some extent, because it is very much compatible and they can quickly adopt it, right? Then they can go ahead with OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. So well, this is to summarize for best performance, OpenVINO, native OpenAPI. Then for best compatibility, we have OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. Yeah, so this is about the product positioning. We have OpenVINO toolkit, we have OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. Definitely the performance wise, OpenVINO toolkit is at the top. Accuracy will get the same accuracy because model is already trained and it is accurate. We are just focusing on the inferencing. Ease of use here, I'll give point to OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow, because there is no need of explicitly converting model, right? We can, everything happens in line. We just need to append 2 lines of code. So well, by looking at these points, we can say that OpenVINO is not for those developers. For suppose for a developer with some edge use cases, like where they need to compute on edge, and they're using a model, and that model doesn't convert with model optimizer. then OpenVINO is not for them. They need to, however, they can write extension to that, and if they have time, they can write extension to that, those unsupported operators. But if they want to quickly get performance gain, then they should switch to OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. And the developers who insist on maximum compatibility with TensorFlow, then they should definitely try out OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. And for developers who want best inferencing performance in deployment, then they should adopt OpenVINO toolkit. So this is the clear distinction between these two products. One more thing I want to say, like OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow is not changing anything in OpenVINO toolkit. It's just another way to explore OpenVINO, and that way is quicker for sure. Yeah, so let's move forward. Well, in OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow, we have 3 phases. We pick a TensorFlow model, we enable OpenVINO as backend, and then we run our application. So these are the 3 easy steps: pick, enable, and run. Then first step is pick a TensorFlow model, train a model, or find a already pre-trained model. We have support of 270 plus supported models, and we are trying hard to add more models to this list. And our documentation talks about this, has a comprehensive list of all supported models. Then how do we enable OpenVINO as backend in our existing TensorFlow application? We just need to add 2 lines of code in the existing application, and we'll get performance gain. That's all. Install the library. Line 1, import the package. Line 2, enable the backend. Then the third step is to run application. So here the thing is, in this OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow takes TensorFlow as an input. Then it scans through all the operators in the TensorFlow graph. Then it marks those operators, whether that operator is supported or not supported. So there are 2 scenarios. First, all ops are supported by OpenVINO. And the second scenario is some ops are supported and some are not supported. In the first scenario, the intermediate representation is created, and that happens inline in this solution. And that intermediate representation is created, and those operators will be run on OpenVINO inference engine. And some ops are not supported, like in partial support of TensorFlow operators. Then in that case, though the operators will be clustered, or they will be grouped intelligently, and then the cluster which has operators which are all supported by OpenVINO, they will go to OpenVINO inference engine runtime, and the operators which are not supported will fall back to native TensorFlow runtime. So in this way, it becomes very robust. And then the last step would be to deploy it on the hardware of choice, like CPU, GPU, GPU. So similarly, this is how the application runs by adding those 2 lines of code. So let's talk about the architecture of OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. So you can see here, right? So let's look at the diagram first. So it provides high-level overview of the functionality of each module and how it transforms the original TensorFlow graph, which is input to our tool, right? First, the TensorFlow model will be passed into a module named OCM, that is Operator Capability Manager. What this module does, this module implements checks on TensorFlow operators to determine which abstraction layers go to OpenVINO integration backends and which layer should fall back on stock native TensorFlow runtime. So this is mainly identification task. And you can see on the right hand, an example is showing the unsupported TensorFlow operation, which is highlighted in the red color, and it is tagged. And now this operation will be sent back to the native TensorFlow runtime for execution. Yeah, so you can see here that select operator is not compatible with OpenVINO, and it will be sent to TensorFlow runtime. So this is how, and then the OCM actually plays role here. Then the graph partitioner will start to examine the, then we have a graph partitioner. It will start to examine the operators that OCM marked for clustering and assign them to clusters. It's basically the grouping activity. On the right hand side, you can see that OpenVINO supported operators will be naturally clustered into two subgraphs, or if all operators are supported, then in that case, everything will be clubbed in one group. And here you can see that the select one is clustered separately because that is not supported by OpenVINO. Yeah. So some cluster might be dropped into native TensorFlow after further analysis. There's one more functionality we have written, that is, suppose a cluster is too small or some conditions are not supported by the target device. Then in that case also, like those operators will fall back to the native TensorFlow runtime because they will not add eventually to the performance gain. Yeah, so this is the second module. The third module is TF importer, that is TensorFlow importer. So well, those TensorFlow operators in cluster subgraphs will be translated into OpenVINO integration operators in this module, TF importer. This model will create ngraph functions that will be wrapped into convolutional neural network to run OpenVINO inference engine backend. Well, it's more of like conversion of TensorFlow subgraph to OpenVINO IR graph, intermediate representation graph. And all these things are happening in line, just repeating. Yeah. Then finally, we have backend manager module that creates a backend to run the neural network built from the previous step. So there are two types of backend which are supported. First is basic backend, which supports Intel CPU, iGPU, MyRed. And we have VAD-M backend that is used for mainly Intel Vision accelerated design with 8 VPUs known as VAD-M or SDDL. So this is the backend manager. And then, yeah, this summarizes like the internals of OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. And yeah, and this is the latest release we had where we have added support to the various native OpenVINO latest version, TensorFlow latest version. We have added some samples in DevCloud. We have now two TensorFlow 2.x compliant C++ samples, and we have enabled FP16 precision on iGPU backend. So these details you can get it on our GitHub repo in the releases section, where you can see our journey, like from the preview state to gold release to bug fix release. And if you be with us, you will definitely see more improvement and more features to added in the list. Yeah, to get started, we have a well documented GitHub repository. We have presence in PyPy as well. We have designed an interactive web page to find out the installation instructions basis your environment. And then we have a lot of examples to help you start quickly, like GitHub examples like classification, object detection, and DevCloud samples, Google Colab samples. And also we have added instructions to run this solution on cloud platforms like AWS, Azure. And if you have further questions, you can definitely email us on OpenVINO TensorFlow@intel.com. Yeah, so well, let's call Mustafa, and he will showcase some cool demos on Google Colab. Yeah, Mustafa, over to you, and I'll stop sharing. You can share your screen.
So yeah, I'll show like two very quick Google Colab demos for classification and a similar demo for object detection. We have to show the usage like of OpenAI TensorFlow in a TensorFlow application, basically. So actually, I present some of the cells here because it will take a little time. And the first one is just just the installation process, like just upgrading the PIP, and Pillow just be used for this demo to read the image. And then the actual installation are just two steps. First, we install TensorFlow, and the latest version of OpenAI TensorFlow supports TensorFlow 2.5.1. And then we can simply install OpenAI TensorFlow from PyPI using pip install OpenAI TensorFlow. And then OpenAI TensorFlow will be ready to use. And then just a very quick check of the GDC version of Python 3 to make sure that it is supported. And then just we are actually running demos based on like our examples. So and just we are cloning our GitHub repo. And then we are downloading the model that we will use, which is Inception v3, a pre-trained model and frozen protobuf file. And then let's go into the actual Python sample. First, we'll start with the imports, and that's all the imports we require for this application. And one thing extra for OpenAI TensorFlow we have is we also import OpenAI TensorFlow. So, and this is the first line we need to have to enable OpenAI TensorFlow in TensorFlow applications. So first, run this. Okay, let me just quickly restart the kernel because it was up for a while. Okay, then I'll start from the first cell. So, while it is installing, let me talk about the rest of the application. And after imports, and we will move into some helper functions that we will use in the sample, like loading the graph and another function to load the image and loading the labels. And this is the actual application to run the inference. And what we will have is just to load the graph, and then to load the image, and then here where we run the inference. First we run a warm up, and then we run the actual inference, and we measure the time. So, and then we print the predictions and also the time. And let me check if, yeah, okay, this is completed. Okay, so and let me move on to the next one. So if we are having issues there. So this is the same sample, but based on object detection. So, and this is actually similar. Like we again have the import OpenVINO TensorFlow, and then loading the graph, and so we have some extra helper functions here in object detection, because in the output also just we need more post-processing, and based on the post-processing also we need to just draw rectangles on the image and for those. So, and that's why we have this letterbox image and to draw the rectangles. And we are, since the model, we are here using YOLO v3 pre-trained with COCO dataset. So, and we are loading the labels from COCO dataset, and some other helper functions to draw the rectangles and to resize the image and drawing all the boxes. And for post-processing of the output predictions, we have a null-max sufficient function. And then this is the actual function we have. And so let me run it first. And so first, this is actually very similar to the previous sample. This is a like a regular TensorFlow application. Just we load the model, we load the image, and first warm-up run, and then we run and measure the timing, and then print outputs. And when running, we just set the input image paths and the model paths and the labels path and feed them into the function that we define here. And also one more line we have is like which is required is to set the backend to a device that we want to set. Here we use CPU because it's the only device available and in Google Colab right now. And as we see, also we are printing the available backends. This is also one of OpenVINO TensorFlow's API calls. We can simply list the available backends. Like here, only CPU is available, and then we set the backend to CPU. And then we run and we measure the inference time. And we can also disable this and run the same on native TensorFlow. After disabling, we are running this again, and same inference and same prediction, same rectangle, but the inference time is longer compared to OpenVINO TensorFlow. And since we are in the cloud environment, also the performance improvement will be like a little limited, but for other devices, like on multiple devices, so this might vary for sure. Yeah. So and let me double check about this, and if it fails, I will hand it over to Yamini. Okay. Okay. So thank you, and this was the demo, and so I will hand it over to Yamini now for the aircraft demo. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mustafa.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let me go to the introduction of DevCloud. So if you're a deep learning developer and you are about to develop or deploy your deep learning solution, you might be thinking what hardware is the best fit for your application. There are lots of hardware available today for deep learning, and it is difficult to invest money and even time in setting them up and trying them out to find the best platform that suits your needs. And all this while considering the trade-offs between the performance, power, and price. So to make this process simple, Intel provides remote access to the latest Intel hardware through DevCloud. And the access to the DevCloud is instant and global from the web browser, with absolutely no system setup required from the user. So this DevCloud actually offers a cloud-based development environment to remotely try AI and vision workloads, to prototype and experiment with different AI models. And the users are always provided access to the latest Intel software and hardware. And you can also utilize the customized benchmarking tools to test the performance of your application with optimized Intel software like OpenVINO and OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow that Kumar and Mustafa just showed. The development time and cost are significantly reduced, and the user can quickly find the best compute for their solution by experimenting on different hardware devices on the DevCloud. And moving on. So on DevCloud, we solve well-known customer or developer problems. Some of the main challenges include software and hardware choice paralysis. To customize the need of every user, like we basically need to consider all the hardware and software choices that are available. While it is great to have so many choices, it becomes very difficult for the user to select the right hardware and software for their application. So with DevCloud, we solve this problem by ensuring access to the right hardware with the latest software that is installed on the systems. The second problem is getting access to the latest hardware. We may not always be able to find the latest hardware available to buy in the market. So DevCloud solves this problem by providing remote access to a variety of latest hardware like CPUs, GPUs, vision processing units or VPUs, FPGAs, and many other Intel devices. Yet another challenge is using outdated technology and not reaping the benefits of latest and greatest features. So in DevCloud, the software versions are continuously updated to the latest stable versions. And we can actually do a very good performance benchmarking as well. So we can use the different benchmarking tools that are provided on DevCloud. One example is DL Workbench, where you can bring in your own model and get the performance benchmarking on different Intel devices. So you can also compare them side by side to select the best hardware for your needs. We also provide a series of tutorials, samples, and cloud native developer environment to help developers get started with the latest Intel hardware and technologies. So on DevCloud, you can find a variety of sample applications spanning across a wide range of verticals and market segments, including worker safety, healthcare, retail, industrial, public sector, smart cities, and many other segments. Now let's see how DevCloud works. So from the block diagram, we can see that we have several capabilities that DevCloud provides. The first is the UI software that allows the user to access Intel DevCloud, all the resources from just a web browser. There is no need to install anything. You can just take your laptop and just access DevCloud from a web browser without having to install anything locally. And today, our labs will be shown using Jupyter notebooks, but we also have a beta version of Container Playground available now. So the developers can bring their own containers and develop containerized applications as well. Second is the development server and storage. Every user will be assigned one development node, which can be used for developing code and submitting compute jobs in a Jupyter notebook or Jupyter Lab environment. So here it's just one core that is allocated for development, typically for each user. But we do have access to all the edge nodes that are present in DevCloud. So if the user wants to submit any job to the edge node, then they get access to the full edge node, all the cores and any accelerators like iGPU, integrated GPU or VPU present on the system. So in the first lab we will be doing today, we will run a Jupyter notebook on development server to interactively view the output, even though it is just showing on one core. But in the second lab, you'll actually see how we can submit jobs to the edge nodes from the development server. So the third component here is the queue server, which handles scheduling compute jobs to different nodes in DevCloud and ensures that each user has the exclusive occupation of a certain node for a job. This provides the ability to test sample code and benchmark performance across different nodes. And to see what hardware is available on DevCloud, the users can check the latest hardware list in the either DevCloud overview page, or they can actually print out the list in a Jupyter notebook. And I'll be showing this utility as well today in the second lab. And using this information, they can submit jobs to any of the nodes containing hardware like CPUs, integrated GPUs, vision processing units, or FPGAs. So after your workload has completed execution on edge nodes, the results will then be sent back to the development nodes for viewing. And we also provide some telemetry with metrics like FPS for the samples hosted on DevCloud. Okay, so that's a brief overview of DevCloud. Now I'll be switching to the browser. And I'll be showing a couple of labs. So for accessing the Intel DevCloud, for today we'll be using Edge DevCloud. So all you have to do is log into devcloud.intel.com/edge. So this is where I am at right now. And if you already have an account and registered in DevCloud, you will see a pop-up button here on the right-hand side where it asks you to enroll or sign in. So if you already have an account, sign into the DevCloud and you can follow along as I show the labs here. If not, you can watch this demo and you can try it out on your own later. So this is the home page. And today for using for the first demo, we will go to the build option. In the build option, you can see connect and create. And in the connect and create, you'll see two options, connect to Jupyter and connect to Container Playground. In this session, we'll be showing the Jupyter demo, but you're welcome to try out the Container Playground. It has like really cool samples. So once you press on connect to Jupyter, it will open up the Jupyter file system. So I already opened and I have everything ready. So this is my Jupyter file system, and you can see I have a bunch of directories here with some of the samples that I have been trying. So now go to New and click on Terminal. So this will open up a terminal. Just trying to see where it went. Let me open the Jupyter again. Okay, so I'm in the tree. Okay, so this opened up a terminal in a new tab. So here I'm first going to create a directory called transfer learning. So we will be looking at a transfer learning example and then inference using OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. So I created the directory and then I entered that directory. And now if you follow the instructions, so let's first download the notebook from GitHub tutorials. So this is a TensorFlow GitHub tutorial. I'm going to copy this. So I'm doing a wget. Okay, great. So I have the notebook here. Now let's go to the file system, and you can see that a new directory has been created, which says transfer learning seconds ago. So let's open this and then open the transfer learning notebook. So before explaining what is there in the notebook, let's first go ahead and start the notebook after making some changes so that the notebook continues to run and we can finish all the training. And then I can go through what each cell does. So first, select the kernel. Here, if you see like the original kernel is Python 3, which is like a basic Python kernel. It doesn't have any packages pre-installed. So I'm going to select a kernel which has OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. So this has the latest Go release that Kumar talked about. So it has TensorFlow 2.5.1 with OpenVINO version 2021.4.1, which is the latest OpenVINO version. So we are in this kernel now, and I'm going to make few changes as listed in this document here. So these three are the changes that I'm going to make. So first I will go to section 1.3.5. So in this section, we are training the model. So I'm going to change this epochs to 2 because 10 epochs will take a long time and we want to finish and view the output in this session. And then next, go to section 1.4.3 and change this fine-tune epochs also to 2 because again, for the same reason, we want to finish this notebook and view the output. And then go to the last cell. So in the last cell, we are actually predicting on a batch of images using a model. So here we want to measure the time. So let's first instrument this last cell. I'm going to import time, the package time. And then I'm going to use the first run as a warm-up run, because typically like when we measure performance or execution time, we have the first run as a warm-up run. So I'm going to label this as warm-up run. And in the second run that I just copied, I'm going to measure the time around this predict on batch call. Exactly, like to see how much time the predict function takes. So first I'm going to set the start time. Then I will measure the end time after the predict call is done. After that, I will print the prediction duration in milliseconds, because time dot time actually gives the duration in seconds. So let's get the difference between end time and start time and multiply by 1000. Okay, so now you can go ahead and start running all the cells. Click on cell and say run all. So this will start running all the cells. And while this is running and doing the training, let's go ahead and see what's happening in this notebook. So in this notebook, we will learn how to classify images of cats and dogs using transfer learning from a pre-trained Keras MobileNet V2 application. So here, the Keras model applications, they're typically trained on large data set, ImageNet in this case. But ImageNet is a generic data set, and it has several millions of images and 1,000 classes. But we want to just classify cats and dogs, and we want to be as accurate as possible. So for this, we are going to use transfer learning. The idea behind transfer learning is that we transfer the knowledge from one domain or area to a related domain or area. So here we are transferring the knowledge that we get from ImageNet to a cats and dogs dataset. So for this, we will be using two techniques. The first one is referred to as feature extraction, and the second one is fine-tuning. So in the feature extraction method, we use the features that are learned by a previous model to and freeze those features and reuse them for the current classification task. So in this case, what we do is we take the base model and we remove the classification layer, the last classification layer or classification head for the base model, and we freeze the base model, and then we add a new classification head with some classification layers. And because we froze the base model, we'll only be training the last classification layers for this data set, which is the cats and dogs data set. And the second technique is fine-tuning. In this case, what we do is we unfreeze some of the top layers in the base model as well, and we retrain both the layers that are unfrozen in the base model along with the new classification layers that we added for the new data set. So this is mainly to improve the accuracy further. So in this notebook, like this is the workflow that we will be seeing. we'll first download the data and examine how the data looks like, and then build an input pipeline and use some Keras utilities to get the test data set and prepare the data. And then we get the Keras MobileNet V2 application, compile it, train it, and then we will look at prediction. And for prediction is when we will show the optimizations that OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow can provide. And as you can notice, all this is done within TensorFlow environment using TensorFlow APIs. So the users don't need to rewrite their application with a new API, and they can still leverage OpenVINO optimizations from the applications written using TensorFlow APIs. So let's go ahead and look at the import statements first. So for this application, we are importing a few packages, matplotlib for plotting some of the graphs, and then packages like NumPy, OS, TensorFlow, TensorFlow.keras.preprocessing, and we will be utilizing a utility called image dataset from directory, which I'll be showing shortly. So this is the URL that contains the cats and dogs dataset. So I'm using the get file utils here to get this zip file and extracting it. So we are unzipping the this zip file. And then once we unzip it, we can actually see that there will be two folders, train and validation folders. Then we will be setting the batch size to 32 and the image size to 160 by 160. And we will be using this image dataset from directory. So this utility, we read the images from this train directory, and we use some other configuration options. Like for example, we set shuffle to true. By setting this to true, we can shuffle lots of images, and this will help us reach convergence faster and also get better accuracy. And for batch size, as I mentioned, we are setting the batch size to 32, and all the images in the data set will be resized to 160 by 160. So as you can see, we can we found 2,000 files belonging to two classes, cats and dogs. And then similarly, we can also create the validation data set by using the same utility, but reading the images from the validation directory. And in the validation directory, we have about 1,000 image files belonging to two classes again. If you want to visualize how the data looks like, so we can actually view the first 9 images from the training data set, and the labels are actually printed as titles on the top. So you can see pictures of cats and dogs with the corresponding labels. So now that we have the training data set and validation data set, this data set doesn't have test data set. So what we will be doing is we'll be taking roughly 20% of the validation data set, and we will be creating a test data set. So for this, we'll be using this cardinality function to understand how many batches are present. And we will take roughly about 20%, which is 1/5 of the data set. And from the validation data set, we will skip that 1/5 of those images. So you can see that the total number of validation batches is 26 and test batches is 6. Then let's use some optimizations to prefetch the data. So we'll be using this auto-tune functionality. So actually, if you want to learn more about this method, you can refer to this data performance guide. But what this does mainly is to prefetch the images, and it loads the images from disk to avoid the IO blocking events. Then we will also use data augmentation techniques. As you saw, we have about 2,000 images in our data set. It's not a very large data set. So to get good accuracy, what we will do is we will augment the data by using techniques like random flip and random rotation. So once you apply these techniques, now let's see how the data set looks like. So for the same image, you did some flip and rotation, and you actually produced multiple images. This will improve the accuracy because we are not just training on some standard angles, but we are actually training on images which have different rotations, angles, and different flips. Now, because we'll be using MobileNet V2 model, we need all the pixel values to be between -1 and +1. But in the images, we typically have the pixel values between 0 and 255. So we need to apply some mean subtraction techniques. So there are two ways you can do it. In the first way, you can directly get MobileNet V2 pre-processing input from the Keras applications, and you can directly use that. Or alternatively, you could append a rescale layer in the beginning of the model. So we will be using this Keras applications pre-processing. Okay, so now that we have the data ready, let's first get the base model, which is MobileNet V2. So here we are getting the model from Keras applications, and we are providing the image shape, the input shape, and we are setting this include top to false. By doing this, we are removing the last classification layer, which is pretty much useless for our current task, which is classifying cats and dogs. And we are loading weights from the ImageNet weights, and we will be reusing them as features for our current classification task. So this feature extraction model, it takes 160 by 160 by 3 image as an input, and it produces 5 by 5 by 1280 as an output. And since we have 32 images in each batch, so we will have 32 by 5 by 5 by 1280. So that will be our output. Now coming to the first technique, which is feature extraction. So we will first freeze the convolutional base. So we are setting the base model dot trainable to false. So this will freeze all the weights. And then we will look at the summary. So you can see that in the model, we have input and some other layers like convolution, batch norm, ReLU, and few other layers. And if you scroll down to the bottom, the last layer is a ReLU layer, which has 5 cross 5 cross 1280. And since we'll be providing a 32 batch size of input images, so this will become 32 by 5 by 5 by 1280. Now let's add a classification head. So first, we will be adding a global average pooling 2D layer. So this will basically average over the 5 by 5 spatial locations, and it will produce a single 1280 element vector per image. So for 32 images, we will have 32 cross 1280 output. After this, since we only have 2 classes, we just need one element, 0 or 1, to differentiate between the 2 classes. So we will be adding a dense layer, which is nothing but a fully connected layer. And we will finally, the output will be 32 cross 1. That will be the final output. Now let's put together the entire model. So first we will start with the input of shape 160 by 160 by 3, and then add the data augmentation that I showed previously, and also add the pre-processing, then the base model. And then I'm also going to add this global average pooling and the dense layer, which is a prediction layer. But here we are also adding a dropout layer with a rate of 0.2, just to make sure that there is no overfitting. So then we compile the model. When in this step, like we will be initializing some of the variables like base learning rate. So here we are taking 0.0001, and we are using a Keras Adam optimizer with this learning rate, and we are using binary cross entropy as a loss. But you can play around with your own optimizer and see if the accuracy improves further. And then here is the final model summary. So you can see the input layer and some subtract and division operators, mainly for the pre-processing, data augmentation, and so on. And then you can see the entire MobileNet V2 base model, along with 2 layers that we added and the dropout layer as well. So the global average pooling 2D, dropout, and dense. So if you look at the number of trainable layers, it is just 2, mainly the global average pooling and dense. So for training the model, we use model.fit. But before that, quickly let's evaluate the accuracy initially. So initially the accuracy is around 53 So it may not perform very well. So it gets it wrong 50% of the time. So train it using 2 epochs using model.fit, and we see that with these 2 epochs, the accuracy improved to about 85%. And we can also look at the learning curves where we can see the accuracy. Since we are just using two epochs, it's basically this value and this value. So we can see that the accuracy increased significantly and the loss also decreased. Then we'll come to the second technique, which is the fine tuning. So for fine tuning, as I mentioned, we will unfreeze some of the top layers of the model, and we will retrain the classification layers along with the top layers. So first, let's unfreeze the model. We will set the base model.trainable to true. And let's look at the total number of layers. So here we see that the total number of layers is 154, but we can just pick, let's say, like the layers after the 100th layer, from the 100th layer for training. So for doing this, we freeze all the layers before the 100th layer. So that means we will have 54 layers from here, along with the 2 layers that we have in the classification layer. So totally 56 layers. So we compile the model again. And for this fine tuning, we are using RMSProp with about 1/10 of the base learning rate, along with binary cross entropy. But you can also use other optimizers and learning rate and experiment with it. So you can see the model summary, which is same as previous before, but then the number of trainable parameters will be different. So as I mentioned, it's 56 here, including the top layers. So now let's continue the training. So we use model.fit, and here now we see that the accuracy improved significantly. It's close to 99%, which is pretty good. So if you look at the accuracy and loss, you can see that the accuracy improved nicely and loss also decreased. Okay, so now comes the evaluation and prediction. So this is using model.evaluate. Here you can see that the test accuracy on the test data set is pretty good. But here we are using evaluation, which doesn't optimize the graph a lot. So that's why we use other calls, basically model.predict, which will which optimizes the graph for inference. So let's look at the time. It's about 313 milliseconds. So, but since we are using model.predict on batch, Keras model API, it introduces a lot of variables, typically a lot of TF variables. So the graph is not very well optimized for inference. We cannot apply some of the graph optimizations. So what we can do is we can also look at the saved model APIs. So let's go back to this document, and I'm going to make some changes as shown here. I'm going to save this model as a saved model, and I'm going to use this convert variables to constants. So let's copy this. I'm going to add this here. So here we are saving the model into this directory, and then loading the model from the saved model. And then we are using this imported.signatures call to get the default serving configuration. And then we will use this convert variables to constants call. And since we are using a saved model, we cannot use this model.predict. So let's go ahead and change that call as well. So as shown in the instructions, let's go ahead and add these 2 lines and comment out this model.predict. So here we are doing exactly what model.predict on batch does. So we are first converting the input to a tensor and providing that as an input to the function f, which is the loaded model. And then we, for this flattened functionality, we are just using a reshape. And the same thing even for this iteration, where we are actually measuring the time. So let's go ahead and run and see if it gives any optimizations. So it will first save the model, so that may take a couple of seconds, and then the saved model can be read. Okay, so looks like it is saving the model to saved model. So let's go back and see if the model actually got saved. So we are in transfer learning and then the saved model. So you can see that the saved model got saved just seconds ago. Let's go back to the notebook. So we can see that the inference time slightly improved with saved model, not significantly, very slightly, 302 milliseconds compared to some 315 milliseconds previously. Now, so this is all using TensorFlow application. Now we'll just add one line of code here to get OpenVINO optimizations. So let's add import OpenVINO _ TensorFlow. So by adding this one line of code, all the optimizations on CPU are available by default. But as Kumar and Mustafa mentioned, if you want to set different backends, we can use OpenVINO _ TensorFlow.setBackend API. So those two are pretty much the lines that you need for optimizing the TensorFlow application. So let's go ahead and rerun the cell, but I'm going to comment out the save model because we already have the saved model. So let's rerun this cell. And look for the output. Okay, awesome. So we have 106 milliseconds from 300. So it's roughly, we are getting like 1/3 of the prediction duration compared to what we got before. That's a significant improvement in the execution time. And you can see that the predictions are also very good. They're accurate, dogs, cats, and dogs, and so on. And this is all, keep in mind that this is all on one core development server. You can actually repeat this exercise by scheduling these jobs on edge nodes. And that is what I am going to show in the second lab. So for the second lab, as you can see, we will be using one of the samples that is in production on DevCloud. So for the second lab, all we need to do is go to this link, and I have this link open here. So this is the link that I have. And this actually has very nice information about OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow and how to get started and everything. So go to the table, and here is where we have classification and object detection. And click on the classification sample application to open the classification notebook. So I actually have this notebook already. I ran this notebook already to save time so that I can quickly go through this notebook and show you all the functionalities. So here, when you open the notebook, make sure that you are still in the TensorFlow OpenVINO kernel so that you can leverage all the pre-installed packages directly. And then you have to just go to cell and then click on run all. So now let's see what this notebook has. So we'll be using these files for this tutorial. So the first one is this notebook that I have open, which is the classification.ipynb. And then we'll also be using a Python script to actually create job scripts and schedule them on different edge devices. And I also have an input image, which is in data images Grasshopper. So let me open that. So when I click on open, it will open up the classification sample, and we have the data one level above. So in images, we can see the grasshopper.jpg. So this is the grasshopper image. We will be using that as an input. So this is very similar to what Mustafa showed. So we'll be first getting an Inception v3 model, and then we will have some of the Python functionalities where we import few Python packages, and we'll import like one additional line along with the existing TensorFlow application, which is importing OpenVINO _ TensorFlow as OVTF. So this is all we need to get optimizations on CPU. But if you want to set a different backend, you can always use OVTF .setBackend call. And then here are some helper functions before we actually run the code. So we have load graph function where we actually load the graph from the PB file. And then we have some functions to read the tensor from video file and to read the tensor from image file. So in this example, we are showing the image file, classification on image file, the Grace Hopper image, but you can also try out the classification on video samples if you want. And then we are also loading the label file, which will give us the labels for the classes that we predict. And then this is the function where we actually run inference. So previous in the first lab, I showed using tf2.x APIs. But in this example, we are using tf.compat.1 with session APIs along with session.run. So similarly, video infer, if you want to infer on a video. Okay, so now that we have defined all the helper functions, let's run the inference. So in this cell, you can actually change the parameters that you want to play around with. So we have different parameters available here. So we have a native TensorFlow flag if you want to just try out the stock TensorFlow performance without any optimizations. And we also have 1DNN flag where we provide some 1DNN optimizations by default in TensorFlow with an additional environment variable. But the 1DNN optimizations still don't provide as much optimization as OpenVINO, because in OpenVINO, we provide both graph and kernel level optimizations. And then we have the input file and the model file, which is Inception v3, and the label file, which is ImageNet label file. We also provide the input layer and output layer names. Okay, let's see the output. So we see that we are able to run the output, and it detected few classes here about military uniform, which is about 78%, and so on. So we will be using this script now, and we will be creating some job scripts so that we can actually run schedule these jobs on edge nodes. So this is an optional video cell, so you can actually provide your own video input if you want to test it out with video. Now let's first check the available edge compute nodes that are present on DevCloud. So using this command here, the PBS nodes command, you can actually look at all the nodes that are available in DevCloud. So as you can see, we have so many edge nodes and multiple instances of each type, so that we don't multiple users can log in and use them. And we have like latest Intel Core i5s, Xeon E3, Atom, like even very low-end devices, along with Xeon machines. And we also have accelerators like integrated GPU and MediaTek 1 BPU, where we have like a USB stick, which we can just plug into any device. And we also have a PCIe card with 8 BPUs to have parallel execution. So I'll be using all these edge nodes today to show you the inference performance. So here we can actually monitor all the jobs that are submitted. So when we submit the jobs to edge nodes, we will have the jobs listed here. So since all our jobs finished, we don't see anything, it's empty. That's great. So let's write the job scripts. So here I'm writing a job script for native TensorFlow or the stock TensorFlow. So I'm just using the Python script, which I showed previously, along with the Inception v3 model. And then I'm providing native, which refers to just using stock TensorFlow as is without any OpenVINO optimizations. Then I'm going to create 1DNN TensorFlow, again using this flag 1DNN, and similarly with OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow. So here I'm providing this OpenVINO flag. So, so note that the first two options where we have stock TensorFlow and 1DNN TensorFlow, we only have access to CPU. But with this OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow, now we can run TensorFlow applications on other devices as well, like integrated GPUs and VPUs. And we will be scheduling the job here. So this is how we schedule the job using CUSA. So we will be providing this job script, and we will be scheduling this on this node, IDC 017, which is a Intel Xeon Gold processor. And we will be scheduling this on a CPU. And the first one is native TensorFlow job. The second one is 1DNN TensorFlow on CPU. The third one is OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow on CPU. now that we have access to other backends with OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow, let's schedule some jobs on GPU, the integrated GPU on Intel devices, then a Myriad, which is a single USB stick, MyriadX USB stick. And then we will also be scheduling batch jobs and scheduling them on VADM, which is basically a PCIe card with 8 MyriadX devices, as I mentioned previously. So we scheduled all those jobs. And at the same time, let's also look at native OpenVINO performance. So for native OpenVINO, as Kumar mentioned, first we need to convert the model to an intermediate representation using Model Optimizer. So this is an offline step, and we converted the model and we generated the IR intermediate representation successfully. And this basically has two files, an XML file and a bin file. XML file has the network topology and bin file has the network weights. Okay, now that we have intermediate representation, let's also write a job script for native OpenVINO run. So for native OpenVINO, we'll be using this classification sample async.py, which has native OpenVINO APIs. So this is not a TensorFlow application. The user has to rewrite the application using native OpenVINO APIs, and they have to provide this intermediate representation file as an input. So once we have the job script ready, let's schedule the job on edge nodes, again with using the native OpenVINO on CPU, on integrated GPU, on Myriad, and Vision Accelerator design, which is also referred to as HGDL. And then once all the jobs are completed, we can actually look at the final performance graph here. So you can see the performance graph here that is displayed nicely. So so this is the native TensorFlow. So we don't see much difference between native TensorFlow and 1DNN TensorFlow. So this is, by the way, this graph is throughput in FPS, so higher is better. But now when we compare OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow on CPU, compared to native and 1DNN TensorFlow, we can see significant improvement in performance. And with native OpenVINO, it is even better, but still they're comparable because the model that we currently ran, it's completely supported by OpenVINO backend. So we don't have any subgraph partitioning or falling back to the native TensorFlow runtime. Then with OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow and native OpenVINO, we also can run the application on integrated GPU. So you can see that they roughly perform the same. And here we are comparing a big Xeon machine with multiple cores to GPU, that too with FP32. So that's why you're seeing slightly lower performance, but you can actually try out FP16 mode with and compare it with core, and you will see a significant amount of performance improvement per GPU. And this is for Myriad. So we can see that even for Myriad, native OpenVINO performs better. And for VADM, they're roughly similar. Both OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow and native OpenVINO. Okay, so that is the end of lab 2. I think, yeah, that's all. So this concludes the labs. So I'll take any questions if you have any.
Yeah, I think I asked this question about what sort of FPGA backends are supported, and so do you have any experience with using FPGAs? You know, how does it work? What layers are supported? You know, anything about FPGAs?
FPGAs, like we actually have did have support for FPGAs in previous OpenVINO versions, but I'm not sure if we do support the latest FPGA versions. Mm-hmm. But in general, the API is the same. Like we can use the same API, like for example, the OpenVINO API to support even FPGAs. So we don't have to write any RTL code or Verilog code. Like we can just like code in OpenVINO C++ or Python APIs, and the graph will be converted internally to the FPGA specific graph because we already have the compiler and everything integrated into OpenVINO. And we can run inference without having to go through all the pain of programming in a different language.
Okay, so what happens if the layer is not supported?
If the layer is not supported in native OpenVINO, so if you're using native OpenVINO APIs with Model Optimizer and Inference Engine, you'll get an error saying that this layer is not supported. And you can always submit a request, and like in the future upcoming releases of OpenVINO, we can support them. But the advantage with OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow is that all these unsupported layers in OpenVINO, they can now fall back to the native TensorFlow runtime. So with subgraph partitioning, we can actually run all the supported portions on OpenVINO and unsupported portions on TensorFlow. So as a whole, like we will be still able to leverage some performance optimizations.
I see. And if it's unsupported, it will be just running on the CPU as a conventional.
Yes, that's right.
I see. Okay. So are there any other questions? Anybody else has any questions?
So if we still have time, I think Mustafa can actually show some other features that are available with OpenVINO integration with TensorFlow very quickly. Those features will be really useful for developers for debugging and developing the applications. Okay, I'm actually trying to find the pane so that I can stop sharing the Zoom screen, but I'm not able to find it. Mustafa, please go ahead and share your screen. Probably it will automatically stop sharing mine.
So yeah, so I'll basically quickly walk over some of the debugging options we use on the example we have. So actually, this is the example we have in our GitHub repo. So from the root directory, if you just go into examples, we have the classification sample here, and on the README, just it explains how to run it. And quickly, actually, I will run this sample and show some ways to use logging on this sample. So I created a script just quickly show some of the parameters. Actually, these environment variables also in our documentation, it can be found. But these are four most usual environment variables we use for debugging. First one is the OpenVINO TF log placement. This will actually print the login information related to clustering. So it will tell which nodes are supported and which clusters are formed and those details. And let me run it. So as you see, it prints a lot of outputs, and actually first, let me go up a little bit. And initially, it will print some outputs based on SN cluster. It will also just print which C file and which line number the output is coming from. So it is basically related to the cluster formation. For example, it says this same cluster and the first node name and the second node name. So basically, it says that these two nodes are formed into the same cluster. And if there's any subgraph partition, it will also say, for example, here the source node is not an op, so so they're not merged into the same cluster, and those details. But in the sample, this is a classification sample. There's only one cluster, and the most important output here actually the lines starting with OVTS summary that will summarize the outputs. For example, how many nodes are in the graph in total, and how many of them are marked as supported by OpenVINO, and how many clusters are created. Here it is one, and then which clusters are going to, so which nodes are run into the clusters. We have only one cluster, which is the cluster 0, and as you see, all the ops here run into the cluster 0, which is named as ngraph 0. And after that, we have some additional logs which are related to translation. For example, for each of when it translates from TensorFlow ALP to OpenVINO ALP, and it will just print related information, the node name and which ALP it is translated to, and the shape of the output. And then these are what it prints with log placement, but for debugging, like further for the runtime, let me. So also we have the OpenVINO TF vlog level, and this level can be set from 1 to 5 based on how much detail we want to see during runtime, and it will print some information like related to the execution runtime. For example, I set it to 1, it will print less details, like for example, like how much time in milliseconds it took to compute, and those kind of some middle information per cluster. And but if you want to just print even more details, we can just set it to, like, for example, 5. So this will print much more details related to runtime. And since, okay, there are so many details here, so I'll also just show how to dump the graphs quickly. And if you want to just serialize the graphs and see what graphs are produced, like we have two environment variables, OpenVINO TF dump graphs and OpenVINO TF dump clusters. First, OpenVINO TF dump graphs, it will dump the first the initial TensorFlow graph and some several stages, like after nodes are marked and after clusters are assigned and after the encapsulation, and then it will also dump the final IR files for each of the clusters. But if you want to see like more details, like more dump the clusters in more detail during between the translation to the final graph, we can also enable an extra parameter which is called OpenVINO TF dump clusters. This will also dump the protobuf files of the clusters, generated clusters, and also like after step before transpose syncing, after transpose syncing, and like some other graphs which are in these steps after the translation. So let me run this quickly. And as you see, like it's created PBTXT files and dot files, which are in the middle of translation after translated, but the IR is not created yet. And also we have the final XML file, which is the OpenVINO IR. So we can simply visualize them with Netron. I can quickly show some samples. And for example, let me first go with. Okay, and this is the original graph that we initially have from TensorFlow. And then, for example, here, just during processing, we marked some of the nodes for clustering, and but basically, this is also the same graph. And let me show after encapsulation, the full TensorFlow graph looks like this, because we replaced because there's only one cluster, and we actually encapsulated the whole graph into a single custom TensorFlow op here, and that custom op is actually this. We encapsulate this, And then we translate this whole TensorFlow cluster into IR file. Here, and this is the translated OpenVINO IR graph which we actually run in OpenVINO backend. So yeah, so and these are like main parameters and and environment variables we use for debugging. And for more details, like in our repo we have a docs folder, and here just inside troubleshooting and usage, actually you can find more details. Yeah, any more questions on this?
So is it possible to filter somehow this outputs for for being able to sort of answer very specific questions about if something is not working well, then where that is happening?
For filtering for VLOG, and for the second one I showed here, in so for VLOG level we can specify the levels.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you could just reduce that level of verbosity. I see.
Yeah. For log level, we don't have the same. It prints everything, but still, we can just go into the line start with OVTS summary. Those are the most important. They provide the summary, and after that, the other lines might be output.
Okay. All right. So, are there any questions from anybody? So, did you plan to talk about anything else? Because we're kind of running into the end of the hour.
It's done from my side. So if Yamin and Kumar wants to add something, I'll leave it to them. Thank you.
Yeah, nothing from my side as well. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to come and present.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming and presenting. This is a really very interesting tool. My team has been using it, or actually used this in the past. We were able to take one of the models that processes videos and convert it into something that was running on Raspberry Pi with this compute stick with VPU2. And, it worked pretty well. So we were quite impressed with this. So we are looking for other ways to use it as well. Yeah, thank you for coming and presenting this. This is a very powerful tool. So we will post this presentation online so that others can watch it. I know that we have a much larger pool of students who are interested in this, and they will be able to watch it at a later time.
Sure.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So this concludes our training session today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.